Most people think that watch brands just pick a movement off a list, but honestly, that's not how it works at all. And after years working in the watch industry, I can tell you there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than most people realize. Having worked with larger brands like Zodiac, Fortis, Sinn, and many others, and now running Helicon with my wife Danielle, movement selection is something I've spent years around. And what's interesting is that customers often assume brands simply choose a movement because it's the most affordable, the most expensive, or the most prestigious movement possible. But in reality, it's a balancing act. When watch brands choose a movement, it's not just about quality. It's about several factors. It's about availability, of course. It's about cost. It's about reliability. It's about serviceability. And of course, what's just as important is it's about long-term support and where the watch sits in the market. You can design the perfect watch, but if you can't source the movement consistently, the entire project can fall apart. And honestly, most people don't realize just how difficult movement sourcing has become in recent years. There have genuinely been projects across the industry delayed or cancelled simply because movements either weren't available or the supply quantities didn't make commercial sense. And this is where experience and relationships really matter. Over the years, we've built relationships with suppliers, distributors, and movement manufacturers, and that makes a huge difference when you're trying to build watches consistently. That's something that customers rarely see behind the scenes. Now, of course, some of the larger luxury brands have fully in-house calibers or heavily modified standard ones, and those can be fantastic. But micro brands, and honestly, some of the larger brands too, still rely on trusted movement suppliers like Sellita, Miyota, Seiko, and many other small Swiss independent brands. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, if the movement is chosen properly. In fact, many of these calibers are proven, robust, and extremely reliable. That's why we love them. And sometimes reliability is actually more important than chasing prestige. Now, this is where things become really interesting, because every movement involves compromise. Swiss versus Japanese, price versus reliability, accuracy versus robustness, prestige versus practicality, and perhaps something most importantly, knowing your source. We often use this analogy. It's a bit like buying fresh produce. You can buy two apparently identical ingredients from two different places and have completely different experiences. And the same actually applies to movements. One supplier may store, regulate, inspect, and prepare movements exceptionally well. Another may simply move units out the door. And that's why two watches using the exact same caliber can perform very differently. And this is why also experienced watch brands obsess over supplier relationships, because consistency matters enormously. So let me give you a real example from Helicon. When we designed the professional chronograph, of course, we considered a fully mechanical chronograph movement. But then you have to think realistically. What is this watch actually supposed to be? For us, it needed to be tough, accurate, dependable, wearable every single day, and importantly, affordable. Because specifically, we wanted this watch to remain accessible to ordinary enthusiasts, military personnel, emergency services, and people who genuinely wanted a proper tool chronograph they could rely on. And honestly, the Seiko VK meca-quartz made in Japan gave us exactly the balance we were looking for. You still get that satisfying mechanical chronograph feel through the pushers and reset action, but combined with the practicality, robustness, accuracy, and affordability of quartz. And for real-world use of this watch, that made complete sense. Because ultimately what we want to build at Helicon are watches that people can genuinely depend on. And already these watches are serving and traveling all over the world. So next time you look at a watch and wonder why a brand chose a particular movement, trust me, there's usually a lot more to it than people think. And honestly, sometimes the best movement on paper isn't actually the right movement for the watch. I'd genuinely love to know your thoughts in the comments below. What matters most to you? Accuracy, heritage, reliability, or serviceability? And if you enjoy this honest insider watch content, consider subscribing, because we've got a lot more coming from inside the industry. Like, subscribe, and thank you for watching.